Awesome, definitely. Tell us about the first, the newest album. How long did it take you guys to do it, and is it something as a joint collective, or is it something that you guys do individual?
Well, writing the whole record took around 2 years,
Okay.
while most of the material is kind of new, but recording the material for the album took around 3 months as a whole. So we started recording the album on October 1st, delivered to the final masters around 27th, 28th of December last year. So that took a while. But on terms of songwriting, I would say it's a collective effort, that's for sure. We have 4 songwriters, and everybody put on the table what he could do best. And of course, it's always related to each person's instrument. Of course, the drummer is not telling the lead guitarist what he has to play in his solo section, and the bassist is not telling the singer what he's doing in his vocals. But it's definitely a collective effort. That's for sure.
Definitely. Who does all your album artwork?
It's an American artist. He is from where's he from actually? I'm not sure.
I have no idea.
Oregon. His name is called Orion Landau. He's actually pretty well known, at least within his artworks. Maybe you're not very familiar with the name, but he did artworks for Nile, for Dying Fetus, for I don't know, a big and long road of actually pretty well-known artist, and he's around since I think mid of 80s.
Right.
And aside from that, he's working for the big companies like Apple. He had some exhibitions on the Times Square in New York, and he's a well-known guy. And he is around 10 years, more or less, apart as a 5th or 6th band member of the band, and he creates all the artwork since we signed to Relapse Records in 2009.
Right. How did you come up with the name for the album?
Diluvium is actually a part of the 4-album concept, so this name has to be related to the previous 3 records, Cosmogenesis, Omnivium, and Akrasis. Diluvium itself is basically the 4th part of this cycle of 4 records, and which deals with the apocalypse and the ultimate end. And diluvium itself is a term out of geology. That means it's more or less meant to be the big flood. And the big flood can be, represented or interpreted as the big flood from a religious point of view, but also from a physical point of view. And I took the name from a book I was reading to prepare the previous record, Akrasis, where the ultimate end of all ends is more or less described that all the matter in this universe, like all elements, are somehow dissolving in the big wave of nothingness. And This is something I could really imagine, and I thought this is simply representing the idea of record.
Okay. And as far as like what inspired you? Who did you look up to and when you were first starting out, when you were a kid, to get into music and to do what you do?
When I started to play classical music as a kid, I had to learn piano, and I had to sing in a choir and solo singing. It was definitely Bach,
right?
Because I had to learn all the etudes and everything from a technical point. But when I started to play like death metal or metal in general, and I picked up a guitar, it was the Chuck Schuldiner and the band Death. That's for sure.
Now, have you ever met any of the guys from Death?
Well, I'm playing in the band Death to All with all the ex-Death members, so I met all of them.
So you met Terry Butler and all those guys?
I was play the first Death to All tour with like also all the old members, but I didn't meet those guys. I met Terry Butler when he played with Obituary a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But I played with the Human lineup and the Symbolic lineup and everybody in between. So I didn't meet Shannon Ham, unfortunately.
Right.
But I played together with Steve DiGiorgio. I played together with Gene Hoglan, Bobby Colby, and Sean Reinhardt, Paul Masvidal. And the fun thing is actually I learned to know all those guys while Steve DiGiorgio was playing in Obscura in Japanese tour many years ago, which was kind of fun. So the connection is actually coming from the other side somehow.
Have you ever, since you're doing the Death thing on the side or whatever like that, did you ever meet the guys from Gruesome? Because it's basically Gruesome is a cover band for Death.
Yes, and I know the band Gruesome very well, and also the members. Matt Harvey also did the Death to All gig, where I missed it in the first place due to visa issues. And I also know the bassist Robin Mason since many, many years.
Oh, yeah. And, everybody knows Robin.
Well, I think everybody knows Robin. Yes. That's definitely true. And absolutely, I love the record. I just listened to the new one. I'm not sure if it's already out, but starting the PR campaign, and I listened to the full album stream at least halfway through yesterday, and it's killer. It's exactly like late 80s, early 90s death metal should be. It's killer, seriously.
It is. It is a phenomenal album. It is really a phenomenal album. And I just talked to Matt Harvey last week, and I was talking to him, but it's a really cool thing that they're doing, and I would never think that a cover band would be as popular as they are, but they are. I mean, it's very freaking popular, and it's kind of really cool, you know. But as far as like Obscura and where you tour and where you've been and whatever you're doing, what's some of the most memorable places that you've played?
In terms of chaos?
Well, as far as like, you know, the band, like festivals and tours, what was some of the most memorable moments of you playing?
Well, the first European tour we ever did was the first time we played outside of Germany, the first international gigs. Definitely memorable. Alongside Suffocation, 2006, that was cool. I remember the first Japanese tour when Steve DiGiorgio played in our band. And we opened up for Triptychon with Tom G. Warrior of Trip. Back at the time, the Faceless and Norexis. That was definitely an experience. We have been completely newbies and rookies when it comes to touring in the United States, which is a complete different story than Europe. Right. And I don't know how we survived it, but somehow we did. And well, aside from that, the last tours have been cool. I always take the positive things of the tours, and for me, it's not a job. It's something I really love to do, and we only pick the tours we want to do. We don't have to tour or to be on the road all the time and constantly playing shows. We just pick up what we want. So therefore, I have always good memories of most of the tours. Although we had our bad times, for sure, with broken vans and neglected. We losing a lot of money, and all of this stupid things happen to each band. So, but I always remember the positive things. Right.
Is it kind of cool when you first started out and you were a small band and you're struggling to get tours and you're trying to get on to everything, and now you can pick and choose where you go. You can play festivals if you want. You don't have to play tours. You can go, we can just play festivals or whatever. How much relief is that when you get to that status where you have enough room underneath you that you can basically do whatever you want? Is it easier for the band to create albums and songwriting and be in other projects?
I mean, it opens more doors, but at the same time, it's way more work to do at the same time. So it's a pro and con at the same time. Right. From my perspective, we still keep what we always did. It's a certain DIY attitude. So when we started out, no one was interested in the music we did back at the time. No one was interested in this a little bit more techie death metal when we started to tour 2004, 2005, 2006. Nobody was thinking about this is going to be popular, but we kept it doing on our own. And we've been very thankful and great, lucky to be out there on a good relapse, and a couple of bigger bands that picked us on, for example, the Black Dahlia Murder, Cannibal Corpse, Children of Bodom many years ago. They just picked up the band because they liked the music, I think, or at least that's a big part of it. And we try to give the same back to the scene. So now we are in the position, we are usually planning our own headlining tours. Yes, it's right, we can choose where we want to go. Okay, this year we're doing two North Currently, we're doing, I don't know, Japan, Australia. But we pick up the bands we like. We don't have anyone telling us what to do or which band we have to take on tour with. We simply try to support bands we like on our own, and we also try to give them the chance, even if they don't have a record deal, to shine or to present their music with like proper circumstances to a bigger audience. That's what we did back in the days with Exhibius, and I think they made a pretty good way through. We picked up Rivers of Nile to their first European tour.
Right.
Now we exist with the Deaf to All vocalist Max Phelps, because I think that they have a big potential and they simply make good music. So coming back to your question, I think it's a pro and con at the same time, and I'm very happy that we evolved that far, that we stand on our own feet and can also give something back to the scene.
Right. How hard is it, do you think? Because I think my personal opinion is when bands started, like, I guess, say in '82 with Metallica and all these guys, and I think the industry was a little bit easier to get into. It was just beginning, and it seemed like every progress, bands have been grandfathered in, and even since Hatebreed and you guys and whenever you guys have started. But it seems like nowadays to get bands into the metal scene and to progress and get bigger, it's really hard. And I think it's going to be harder in the future, but do you think there's going to be bands that's going to last 30 years? I mean, bands like Hatebreed and Lamb of God and so many others, they're going on 20 years. Goat Horse going on 20 years or 25 years. But do you think bands coming out today is going to have the same longevity? Because it seems like they just don't have that push. And I don't think that the industry's made for it right now.
That's a very, very good question. And from my perspective, the music scene, it doesn't matter if it's metal or rock, indie, whatever, always was changing. It was always changing. It's very popular to think the whole music industry went down the road when the digital channels came up with like a file exchange and the bad MP3s and everything. But
right.
In the 70s, 80s, it started with portable recording equipment. People did bootleg LPs. Later on, the cassettes have been there. Then the ME player, if somebody remembers that, or CDRs with burning your CDs. And somehow this was always a big change, and simply the industry has to follow the path. And this is then returning back to the bands.
Right.
The only thing that definitely changed from my perspective is the value of music. These days, it's easy to check out. Music is getting more and more consumed, so the amount of music is way bigger than back 20 years ago.
Right.
Because music is everywhere. You can simply pick up your phone and go down the street and listen to music, which was not possible back in the days, or you have to have had to listen to the same album for, I don't know, like 2 months. So the problem is that all the bands that have a size are not able to survive anymore, because they somehow get some or get a revenue out of the business. You have to see that there's the positive aspect, that it's very easy to record a record these days and put it out, even
right.
if the standard is decent, in my opinion. It's very good if you have dedicated members about artworks, recording, putting out a GoFundMe campaign, whatever. It's very easy. So that means it's more freedom to put out a broad diversity of music out. At the same time, there are only the big old names that headline the festivals, and all the bands in the middle that could have been able just from 5 years ago, they don't have this freedom anymore, because they don't make enough money, because they don't have anything from the record sales or digital sales,
right.
because the cut is way too small for those bands, and therefore it's very hard to survive. You mentioned Goat Horse. We just played a tour with them.
Yep.
A couple of months ago. Fantastic guys, and they are road dogs, and this is what makes bands big these days. Or if you survive on the road, I think you can survive for 20, 25, 30 years or even longer. And there are still a couple of good examples of bands that are up and coming, and still make it big. The best example is Ghost, from my opinion. They're not that old, but they are the next stadium rock band or stadium rock metal band, from my perspective.
I think two things. I think that Ghost, number one, is I think a lot of people can learn from Ghost because it just seems like they were always there, and they haven't. They're one of the biggest bands on the planet that has come out in the last 5 years that got as big as they did. No other band did this. They're just massively huge, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that it's something that, to try to learn how they do it and why they do it. But as far as younger bands being around and doing what they're doing, I think it's harder for them. I think there's just a lot of bands. I mean, there's a ton of bands. Back in the day, even when you guys started, there wasn't that many bands. I mean, you've got your stuff, but to get hooked up on a major record label and to do this big tour, a lot of times these younger bands, they just go on this tour and be like, okay, we're going to be like Obscura. We're going to be big. This is what we want to do. But they don't understand. Nowadays, you have to have publication. You have to have something backing you up. You just can't go out there by yourself to do this because the industry's not built like that. It just doesn't. Back in your day, it was. You could do that. Bands could pick you up and be like, hey, come aboard with us. Nowadays, I think that they have to go through the proper channels and go through management, and it just seems like it's harder. So you guys are paving the way for many, many, many bands. I always wish that a musician would write a book on, the trials and difficulties of being in a band. The ups and downs and how to make it and what we did and so forth like that. But it's just it's very interesting to think about.
Yeah, you also have to see the circumstances of the band. If I see, for example, a big band from Europe or within the extreme metal scene is Behemoth, from my opinion. They just have been on tour with Slayer, so they're big, and they draw like I don't know, between 800 and 2,000 people a night, and they're from Poland, and life in Poland is extremely cheap.
Yeah,
and so therefore you have to understand that the circumstances for each band are completely different. If I would write a book about we became a solid touring band, it might be completely different than somebody from the United States or from Mexico or from, I don't know, Japan would have the opinion. Even in Europe, it's completely different. 10, 15, 20 years ago, if you do a band from Scandinavia, you got a record deal instantly. And
yeah,
at least that changed a little bit. And also the circumstances about cultural funding went way better, at least in Germany, what I could say. In Scandinavia, you get supported by the government, you get free time off from your workers, and it's simply a stands for each band, and there's a reason why there are so many bands from the United States or from Scandinavia touring around the world, while other countries are not that represented around the world. At least there are always a couple. In general, it's simply a different culture. In Scandinavia, for example, you have the big support by the government. In the United States, at least what I feel, that the respect for the musician is way bigger. In Germany, for example, when you tell somebody, "Hey, I'm a musician," they ask you, "Hey, why you don't get a real job?" And, I figured when you say, "Okay, I'm a musician," you get a certain kind of respect, and it's more or less a common thing that people go on, which is not possible over here. If you're studying whatever you're studying at the university and you're off for a month, you get kicked out. In the United States, it's fine. It's simply a different attitude, and all of those circumstances, not only economically but also culturally, involved in the whole thinking about a band is getting big is also very important. So it's not that easy to explain how a band is working or not, and in the end, it's always luck. At least what I can say. Sometimes bad luck, sometimes good luck.
I completely agree with you. The bottom dollar, it's always luck. It's just the luck of the draw, and I think that I think it's getting harder nowadays. But As far as your band and the new album, what's been the response on that?
So far, it's the best response we ever got. I already received a couple of rankings, like rankings from the big magazines,
right.
And we made it to. We always had ratings, and each album went a little bit further and a little bit higher ranking than the past. But this time, we really made the pole position in the biggest German magazine, and the second big metal magazine ranked us on the second place, which is absolutely unbelievable with this kind of music we are doing. I mean, it's not something I don't know you're going on, what you're doing. It's very demanding music with a lot of musical thoughts behind it, and it's not easy listening. And this is definitely killer, and I'm really overwhelmed how positive the feedback is so far. So the album is not out yet, so we're just receiving the first couple of reviews during the last 1 or 2 weeks, and so far it's very interesting, because when we as a band put out the record, of course we are happy and convinced it's good work, it's a good album we did, but nobody knows how the press or the fans will react on it.
Yeah, definitely. It's I've listened to a little bit of it, and I've always been a fan of you guys, and I've always liked your music. But where can everyone go get your music at? What do you have, a specific website, or where can they go?
Basically our website, realmofobscura.com is always a good sign.
Okay, definitely. And what's the next thing on your plate? Are you guys going on a big tour this year, or what are you doing?
Yes, we just announced the Diluvium North American tour, and the dates will follow in the next couple of days. And we're doing a headlining run with Beyond Creation, Archspire, Inferi, and Exist. Before that, we have a couple of shows in Europe. We're playing one of the biggest metal festivals in Europe, called Summer Breeze Festival in Germany, with like 30,000 people, which is killer. And Italian festival called Colony Summer Festival, and these are basically the first shows where we play new material. But the release tour is this Diluvium. Aside from that, we are planning ahead till 2020 with so many in Europe, in Australia, in Japan. So it's a full schedule, and we can't wait to go on the road and play the new material, because definitely. Always good to play something new instead of the old evergreens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully I get to see you in St. Louis soon, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck. And congratulations on the new album, and I will be anticipating to hear it.
Killer. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much.